Welcome back. Today, we're diving into the story of how a nation can transform its single greatest resource, its people, into its most powerful asset. It's really a story about unlocking potential and forging a future, one person at a time. So, let me start with a question for you. When you think about a country's wealth, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it gold? Oil? Maybe huge factories? Well, what if I told you that the most valuable treasure isn't something you can dig out of the ground or build with steel? It's the people. Yeah, the human resources. Let's think about it this way. Imagine a country is a gigantic workshop. Its people are the raw material, just sitting there, full of incredible untapped potential, waiting to be shaped, sharpened, and made strong. So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at how all that raw potential actually becomes real power. Then, we'll get into the 5 key tools for that transformation. We'll also clear up some really important distinctions, check out India's report card, face the big challenges, and then at the end, we'll put it all to the test. Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Just having a huge population isn't a guarantee of anything. That raw material, the human resource, it has to be actively developed. It needs to be turned into something much more powerful. And that whole conversion process, it has a name: human capital formation. It's the idea of deliberately investing in people to boost their knowledge, their skills, and their health. It's basically the economic version of a blacksmith taking a lump of raw iron and forging it into a sharp, strong, and super useful tool. So how exactly does this forging happen? What are the actual tools in our big national workshop? Well, it turns out there are 5 main sources, 5 key investments that are used to create this thing we call human capital. First up, and this is the big one, is education. This is the blacksmith's hammer. It's the main force that shapes all that raw potential, giving it structure and giving it purpose. You see, an educated person doesn't just earn more. They tend to have a better social standing and can make much more informed choices in life. Next, we have health. And if education is the hammer, think of health as the water the blacksmith uses to quench the hot metal. It's what tempers the steel, making it strong and resilient. It's simple, really. A sick worker just can't be a productive worker. So spending on things like vaccines and healthcare isn't just a social good, it's a direct investment in the strength of your workforce. Then there's on-the-job training. This is our sharpening stone. A tool can be perfectly forged, but it's not much good without a sharp edge. This is where companies invest in their own workers, honing their skills for very specific jobs and boosting productivity right there on the factory floor. Our 4th tool is migration. This is all about logistics, moving the finished tool to where it's needed the most in the workshop. People move maybe from a village to a city or even to another country, looking for jobs where their skills will get them a better salary. It's just reallocating that capital to where it can be used most productively. And finally, we have information. This is the blueprint. You can't forge a great tool without a plan, right? People need to know what jobs are out there, what skills are in demand, and what kind of salaries they can expect. Spending time and money to get this info makes sure all the other investments are made wisely. Now, we've been talking about people as tools and capital, but we need to be really careful with these metaphors, because treating people as tools for the economy brings up a really important distinction that we have to get our heads around. On one side, you have the idea of human capital. Here, education and health are seen as a means to an end. The goal is to make people more productive to grow the economy. But on the other side, there's human development. This perspective says that education and health are an end in themselves. They are basic human rights essential for well-being. So the big question is, are we investing in people to grow the economy, or are we growing the economy so we can invest more in people? They're linked for sure, but the why behind it is totally different. And this also helps us see another key difference, this time between human capital and physical capital, like a machine. A machine is tangible, right? You can touch it, you can sell it, but a skill, that's intangible. It's inside of you. You can't separate it from yourself. And get this, a machine mostly benefits its owner, but an educated, healthy person, they create benefits for everyone. They're more likely to participate in society, and a healthy person doesn't spread disease. Human capital is part of us, and it benefits all of us. Okay, so we've got the theory down. Now let's put it into practice. Let's take a look at India's progress report. How well has the country actually been doing at forging its own human capital? time for a little quality control check. And in many ways, the results have been pretty dramatic. I mean, just look at this. The growth in real per capita income shot up from about 7,600 rupees back in 1951 to over 94,000 in the 2018-21 period. That's a huge leap, and it shows that as investments in people have grown, so has the economic output they create. We see a very similar story when it comes to education. This chart tracks literacy rates from 1990 to 2017-18, and two amazing things stand out. Not only had the rates for both men and women gone up a lot, but that big gap between them has started to shrink. That's a great sign for both the economy and for gender equity. But, and as always, a but isn't there. Here's the catch. Even with all this progress, the level of investment isn't quite where it needs to be. Way back in the 1960s, a commission recommended spending at least 6% of GDP on education. Today, we're still only at about 4%. The workshop is definitely producing better tools, but it's not running at full capacity yet. And that underinvestment, well, it leads to some pretty obvious problems. When you start to look really closely at the tools coming out of the workshop, you can start to see some cracks in the armor. Let's look at three of the biggest challenges. First, even though literacy rates are up, the absolute number of people who still can't read is massive. That's a huge amount of wasted potential. Second, the education system looks like a really steep pyramid. Lots of kids start at the bottom, but only a tiny fraction ever make it to the top, to higher education, and that creates a massive skills gap. And then, here's the crazy paradox. Unemployment is actually highest among the most educated graduates. We're forging all these high-tech tools, but the economy isn't quite ready to use them. Okay, let's bring this all home. To wrap up, let's tackle a couple of final questions that really get to the heart of everything we've been talking about. So let's start with a foundational question. Out of all the different sources we talked about, what would you say are the two main pillars of human capital formation? The two big ones are, of course, education and health. One builds the skill, the knowledge, and the capability. The other makes sure a person is healthy enough to use those skills over a long and productive life. They really are the hammer and the tempering process. You just can't do the job without them. And that leads us to our final and maybe most crucial question. If these investments in people are so good for individuals and for society, why can't we just leave it to the private sector to sort out? Why is it so essential for the government to be involved in education and health? It's a question that really gets to the core of how we build a stronger, more prosperous society for everyone. What do you think? Thanks for joining us.